Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here today. So, I want to chat about eczema. Obviously, that's why you guys are all here. Um, so, let's get into it. Okay, so first, let's chat about eczema just in generally. So, it's obviously a skin condition that can come in a range of um, I guess, like, on the end of being not bad and then on the end of being like extremely chronic and being all over someone's body. So, what I really want you guys to take away from this is that eczema is not just a skin problem, it is a systemic problem, and most of it comes from the gut. So, lasting change means we need to heal from the inside out and we need to support the gut in everything that we are doing, as well as a whole lot of other aspects that I'm going to chat to you guys about today. So, one of the first things I want to chat about is obviously the gut and the role the gut plays. So, anytime that we have a compromised gut, we can have issues come up, and eczema is one of them. There are also things like hay fever and asthma that can all come from an imbalance in the immune cells that are in our gut. Now, what happens is we have what are called villi in our gut, and they're like little projections. And what happens is when these become flattened, instead of food being broken down in the way that it should be in our gut, big particles of food are passed through our gut lining because those little villi aren't there to break it down, and they get flattened because of us consuming foods we shouldn't eat, from things like antibiotic use. And a lot of that can occur from just, say like one lot of antibiotics. So when this happens, it means that big particles are actually being passed the gut lining. And this can then trigger a histamine response because the body recognizes it as something that is not normal. And so it then creates a histamine response. Now, this can then be further fueled by the fact that you eat foods that are high in histamine. This overdrive is just going to keep going, and this inflammation just keeps worsening. So, it's really important when we are going through this process that we really reduce the amount of histamine foods that we are consuming. Otherwise, the body just keeps spilling over, right? If you imagine it like a cup and your cup is three-quarters full and then you eat more histamine foods, it's just going to spill over. And that is where the flares come from. So common high histamine foods are things like aged cheeses, fermented foods, processed meats. Things like fruits like strawberry and citrus can actually trigger histamine release. And honestly, these probably are the biggest culprits in my clients. So citrus and strawberries are always a big flagged food for me. So I say to my clients to watch what happens after your kids eat these kind of foods. And, dairy can be a huge inflammatory food, but a lot of the time with eczema, it's also these other foods. So it doesn't mean it's not going to be dairy, but it could be a combination. So gluten is also another big inflammatory culprit. And again, for some people, it might be just gluten and a couple of other foods. It might be all of them. It's so dependent on each person. There is also nightshade vegetables, which can create a lot of issues, especially tomatoes, capsicum, and potatoes. I see so many of my clients react to these. Now, obviously, not every child is going to react to them, but it's about me giving you the tools to understand what are the common things that can cause this reaction. And we then get you to basically use a simple food diary. So when you see a flare, which is obviously a worsening of the eczema, and this could be kids getting really, really itchy, or anything like that, then you would write down the foods that they've consumed within the last 24 hours. And you can note which of these foods, like high histamine or high inflammatory foods, have been consumed. And then we work through a process of removing them for a while and reintroducing one at a time to see what the body reacts to. So next, I want to talk about the gut health and probiotics. So there's something that's called the gut-skin axis, and it basically means that you've got your gut health in relation to your skin. And it directly impacts the health of your skin. So when the gut is out of balance from antibiotics, poor diet, stress, the immune system becomes reactive. Now, probiotics are one of the best tools we can use to help restore balance. And it's not just any probiotic. There are often like multi-strains, but to get the best effect, we're better off with working with single strains that have been shown to be extremely supportive for this condition. Now, one of the best strains is Lactobacillus rhamnosus, LGG, and studies have shown that this probiotic can reduce the risk of eczema in children, especially if taken during pregnancy and early infancy. And it helps to regulate the immune system and strengthen the gut barrier. And this is a non-negotiable for all of my clients. We support the gut, we support the skin topically, and then we do all the big work with the homeopathics. So again, it doesn't mean it's like a magic bullet, but it's another piece of the puzzle that we can then support the system. So I now want to chat about like topical care. So when the skin becomes broken, sore, itchy, the first instinct that most people have is to moisturize it because they see it's dry. But here's something to think about: when we moisturize it, we keep it wet. And if you know any wound and you put like a band-aid on a wound, it doesn't heal because it's wet. So in order for it to heal properly, we need to dry it out. So one of the ways I do that is with a zinc and calendula based cream. So generally Wellida's nappy rash cream, their calendula nappy rash cream, or Badger have a similar one. So we use that to really help to dry up the skin. And this basically allows those topical wounds to start healing and drying out and to help the inflammation come down. And again, we do this instead of keeping it covered or keeping a barrier on it, because we actually want those topical wounds to heal. Further down the line, when my clients get to a point where it's just dry skin, the eczema has actually healed, and then it's just dry skin, there is another moisturizer that I do recommend, and that is called Caroline's Cream, but it's only when we're at that stage, because otherwise it just works against the process that we're trying to do. And so many people really struggle with the drying out part. But the other thing that we can do when we're drying it out to support the moisture levels in the body is doing wet wrapping. And this is where you would put the cream on, you would get paper towel, you dampen it, you wring it out so it's just damp, you put it on, if it's on the face, and then you can glad wrap around or just hold it there. And that will allow the natural moisture to be drawn within the skin. Okay, so we've obviously looked at food and gut health, but eczema can also be triggered by everyday things that we have in our body. And as I said, one of the biggest things I say to my clients is it's about reducing the load that is on the body. Because if you've got histamine and then you've got environmental exposures, the body just goes into havoc and it cannot break everything down and detox, and the skin just goes mental. So some of the most common things that people can be triggered by are chemical-based products. So this is our laundry detergents, our baby wipes, our soaps, shampoos, and our cleaning sprays. So I encourage all of my clients to go as low tox as possible. It's so easy to access low tox products now. even from the supermarket. Laundry detergents are a big one because obviously all of their clothes that are then being absorbed, like whatever particles are left on them, are then being absorbed into baby skin constantly. Same things with baby wipes. And soaps and shampoos are actually not needed. Kids aren't dirty when they're little. And if the kids' hands are dirty, wash their hands, that's fine. But try and minimize all of that stuff as much as possible so we can really reduce the load that is on the body. Another thing is environmental triggers. So obviously dust, pollen, mold, pet dander is a huge one. So I've said with a lot of my clients that if they have animals, if they can keep them away for a period of time. So, if baby is in the lounge room, if they can stay out of the lounge room, just so it gives baby time to actually get over what they're trying to fight against. Otherwise, it's so hard because this back and forth process of things starting to get better, but then getting worse because of the exposure to this stuff. Now, the other thing is obviously medical triggers. So antibiotic use can disrupt the gut, and vaccines, medications, and stress on an already compromised immune system. So the important thing to remember is that each child is unique. What sets one off is not going to set another off. And our role in the first couple of months, especially the first month, is about observation. So it's about noticing the patterns of when and how they're reacting, what they've been exposed to, and then slowly making changes to lessen the load to allow the body to heal. Now, obviously, there's a huge emotional layer that can be present when kids are older or with adults. But this is where we need to understand that our skin is a barrier between ourselves and the world. So there is often an emotional level. So things like anxiety, feeling unsafe, carrying family stress, those things, or even deeper themes like abuse, grief, and depression can actually affect eczema. So when it comes to little babies, generally there's a genetic and familial aspect if they haven't been exposed to antibiotics or vaccines. And eczema can run in the families, like through the lines. And so we have to come in and clear that part as well as supporting the child. So often I will switch between a couple of homeopathic remedies. One works on that ancestral layer that's been passed down, and the other is really supportive of what that client is going through in that moment. And homeopathy shines with this on such a deeper level, but I want people to understand that this is no quick fix. Generally, when people come to me, they have tried everything. They're at their wits' end. They've used, conventional medicine, steroid creams and stuff, and they are struggling so much. And it takes time. It's not just all fixed overnight. So it's a really important thing for people to remember. So remedies work on a deeper level to support both the physical skin symptoms and the underlying emotional or inherited patterns. So when we look homeopathically, we're always asking, is this purely physical? And often with like little babies and stuff, it can be. Or is there a long-standing emotional component to it? Or again, is there a genetic hereditary part that we need to look at? So by addressing these layers, we're not just soothing the skin, we're helping the body heal from inside out, because homeopathy stimulates the body to heal itself, to bring itself back into balance, right? But that takes time. So empowerment is a huge thing, and I spend a lot more time supporting my clients with eczema because of the fact that it can be such a frustrating condition that goes back and forth. Now, it's not a quick fix, and there is so much stuff that you can do practically now to help. And this is one of the biggest things I say to my clients. So keep a food diary. Notice when the patterns of their eczema are flaring and what foods they've eaten. Have they been around animals? Have they been out playing in the dirt or around pollen? Notice those things. The other thing you can do is swapping out your household products. So go low tox. take away all of the shampoos and stuff like this and just go back to real basics. And also introducing gut healing probiotics is amazing. We have to remember to be patient with ourselves and with our children. When we approach eczema holistically, we're not aiming for short-term relief. We're trying to get long-term healing, right? And this process can be different for everyone. The journey is not always the same. Now, one of the biggest things I want to emphasize is that homeopathy has a principle called obstacles to cure. Now, for example, with eczema kids, this can set back the process of healing. And it's important to understand that eczema doesn't always just go straight forward. For so many, it can go forward 3 steps and back 2. And I want to explain why. Because illness, teething, and triggers will all compromise the gut. And because we are trying so hard to heal the damage in the gut, every time you compromise it, it is going to flare the skin. So whether that be by food, by teething and inflammation, or by illness, okay? So every time a baby gets a virus, it will flare the skin. And it's unfortunate. So if you're doing this during winter and a child is sick multiple times, then their skin is going to go back and forth and back and forth. But as long as we are seeing progress, we're on the right step and we just keep going. And this is where a lot of people struggle because they get really impatient with that healing process, not understanding that it takes time. I have so many little kids in my clinic that have face eczema, so it covers their whole face. And every time they get teeth, they get new teeth. What does that cause? It causes inflammation in their gut, in their jawline and around their mouth. So if you've got eczema there, that's going to flare that as well. And again, this can be a really hard process for people to trust the process, you know, and yet it's so important that they do, because when that calms down, the skin will start improving. And what happens is the next time it happens, it doesn't flare as bad. It gets better. And this is always the parameter we need to measure on. Is it getting less? Is it getting less? And when it is occurring, is it not occurring for as long? So it's about that constant scale of improvement. Now, as I said, it's really important we support the vital force throughout this process. Now, I want to share my screen with you all because this is a really good way of us seeing this process. So this is one of my clients, and this photo is after 2 months of treatment. Okay, now you can see the significant difference in this little boy. Okay, 2 months of treatment. And this is by doing the cream, the probiotic, and the right homeopathic remedies. In comparison, this is another little boy that I've dealt with. Again, you can see the improvement, but he's been under my treatment for about 8 or 9 months. And this process has gone back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Every virus, every time he's been teething, his face got worse. It would get better and then it would get worse. Or, for instance, being a crawler, he was then exposing himself to food that he shouldn't have been eating, and so that would flare him again. So again, I want to emphasize this point because here we have 2 little boys with a beautiful progress, but it's taken them different times for that progress to occur. And that is because eczema is so individual and we have to get the right remedies. For some clients, we might need to go through 4 remedies before it completely clears. We might have other clients that need 1 or sometimes 2 remedies to get this effect. And it's so individual. And that's where homeopathy is amazing, because it is so individual. But it is important to understand that it's not always going to be really quick. Some of my clients, a lot of them, when it's not severe eczema, it is clear within 2 months. For others, the process can take up to a year. And it's really important that we understand that. Okay. Sorry. So the last thing, I obviously want to make sure that we understand that every child is unique. So every single healing process and pathway is going to be different. And the layers that we have to get through, whether that's, their gut health, their diet, reducing their triggers, figuring out all of this stuff at the start is the hardest part. And I try and support my clients as much as possible. So prior to dosing, we keep in contact pretty much daily via text, because eczema aggravates really quickly on homeopathic remedies as well. And we have to make sure that we get the right dose. For some clients, a daily dose and they don't aggravate. For some other clients, they will have one dose and it will aggravate. So we know that they might only need it twice a week or 3 times a week or every second day. So during that first initial phase, I keep in contact with my clients a lot to figure this out so that they don't aggravate. Now, sorry. There's a couple of questions that obviously have been sent in that I really want to answer. So Adele asked, how do we identify flare-ups? So flare-ups are obviously when skin gets worse. So if you've got like a baseline, and I talk to my clients a lot about this, figuring out what a baseline is, what do they normally look like? And when it gets worse, are they itching more? Are they really, really irritable? Like you can see, they're just not happy in themselves and they're trying to scratch themselves a lot more. That is a flare up. So for every single client, that's obviously going to look different because of age and where their eczema is. But generally, wherever their baseline is and when it gets worse is a flare. Nappy areas can be multiple things. So this could be either staph, and often we would come in with like a staph nosode if it is. If it's just another like presentation of a skin issue, then I go off the symptoms. So homeopathy is all about matching the symptoms that a client has to the remedy symptoms, and that's all it is. So for me, it's about me knowing the remedies and which is going to match the symptoms that my client has the most. Okay, so what creams do we suggest? Obviously, I've said the Weleda calendula cream, but I'm pretty sure that that has a seed oil in it. So if he has allergies to that, I would get a plain zinc cream. And again, that's because it will help to dry out the topical wounds, and that's the biggest thing we want. So I would have a look at Badger's, and I would have a look at, and that's a Badger's calendula cream. And please, if you would like, I can send you pictures of these so that you can see what they are. But yeah, this is the Weleda calendula cream. And the Badgers one I don't have, but again, I'm pretty sure the Badgers one has less ingredients than the Weleda one. So I would check both of those. And if not, Natasha, I would go for a plain zinc cream. So thank you guys all for being here. I hope that this answers your questions. I hope that this gives you some information and some tools that you can use now prior to coming in and seeing me in clinic. So again, thank you guys for being here. And thank you for jumping on with me. I hope you guys all have an amazing day. We've also got some freebies for you guys being here. So that will all be emailed out to you. So make sure you look out for that. Thanks.